Welcome to the Real World Blockchain Podcast, where we help businesses understand how cryptocurrencies and the blockchain industry can fuel their businesses. This episode is brought to you by Web3 Enabler, the first and only Web3 payment solution in Salesforce. I am Gauthier Lamothe, your host, and today I am here with my partners in crime, Niles Lee-Smith, our blockchain connoisseur, Zoe Braiterman, our community czar, and Rebecca Kaplan, our UX and marketing specialist. Hi, everyone.
Hi, how are you?
Terrific. Girls, how are you?
We could find.
All right. So, first news of the day. Another small country is now accepting cryptocurrencies. So, have you guys heard of Liechtenstein?
I have.
But I do now.
Have you been there?
I have not. Yeah, it's on my list.
So, Liechtenstein is kind of like a principality, so same type of jurisdiction as Monaco or Andorre. Very tiny countries under a protectorate of other countries, I believe. Small one. So, it's basically between Switzerland and Austria, a very small country, and a huge GDP per inhabitant and um, a huge price in real estate. Of course, that's quite logical for a small territory with very rich people. And that's interesting because thanks to the Multiverse X network, Liechtenstein is now accepting cryptocurrencies as a legal tender, meaning that you can pay for a few public services like your, for example, health insurance or like your driving license and fiscal stamps. You can pay for that in cryptocurrencies, notably Bitcoin and Ethereum and a few others. How does that sound to you guys? Is that music? Is that music to your ears?
Absolutely. I think it gives me hope that it will inspire other nations to incorporate cryptocurrency into their state operations in a similar way. Maybe they are about to start a new trend in the crypto space.
Zoe, what do you think about that one?
Definitely, I agree that it can really have the opportunity to promote financial opportunities of various sorts.
Wonderful. And it's interesting because a few years ago we heard stuff like, oh, Bitcoin is like a decade ago, oh, Bitcoin is not a serious project. Then, oh, cryptocurrencies are maybe interesting, but just for maybe a few special use cases. Okay, now it's for private people. Okay, now it's maybe for cypherpunk and private people. Okay, maybe it's just for small countries. So we know that Switzerland is already doing that. El Salvador is doing that, and a few other countries now. So um, a bit less than 10. So this bodes well for 2024. So next topic then. You guys remember the infamous FTX scandal. We've been talking about that on Real World Blockchain, and that's quite interesting because in a new court hearing, it has appeared that that FTX should be able to repay everyone. So that's quite a huge news. Niles, what's your reaction on that?
I'm excited. Very happy that people will be made whole. I am a little flabbergasted in just the way that this has gone down from being one of the most respected people in the industry, Sam Bankman-Fried, and then now in prison. And at the end of the day, people are being made whole. Like, what happened? like, like, where did things go wrong in such a way that all of a sudden there was a collapse when they were potentially liquid, but just mismanaged by a bunch of kids on Adderall?
Yeah.
Zoe, did the ADHD joke ring a bell?
Yeah.
You knew that
So
these
I think,
you knew that these
yeah,
guys
there's
were on Adderall.
definitely an image that you get of these people when you think about, how selfish and careless and greedy they were. Really foolish considering that their background was, essentially the kind of the stereotype of smart and also privileged and they really kind of screw that up together among their their little group. So it's good that people are getting paid back from that, because that, just those few people who made something, huge, really made everyone super skeptical, to say the least.
Yeah,
And,
and oh, sorry, go ahead.
crushed everyone's hopes. People came to me, and because crypto is unfamiliar to a lot of people, and kind of terrifying at that same point, and they go to me the moment I say that I'm a Web3 executive, and they mention that, and they're terrified, and they're like, gut reaction is, oh, crypto scam, but she seems nice. And then it's just, it reflects poorly on really everything. So I'm glad that at least some of the repercussions are being rectified.
Indeed. Well, there are two repercussions. One of them is that FTX has stated its expectation to repay customers in full during the bankruptcy liquidation. But the other statement made in the court hearing, was that an FTX attorney confirmed that they abandoned the plans to restart anything with this cryptocurrency exchange. So FTX is dead. Let's not say long live the new FTX, but at least this is dead. And let's see if these guys are honorable. One of the guesses, I don't know what you guys think about that, but one of my guesses is that because there was also a huge failure from the instances that were supposed to audit the whole thing, I suppose it's also a political move because it would be very costly in terms of credibility for the financial instances to let this go, because there was also a failure, and nobody's has got clean hands in this history. Not only the guys from FTX, but also many people in the regulation instances. So, what do you think about that guess? It's just a guess. I'm not sure about that, but it sounds coherent to me.
Yeah, I agree, and I think the one thing I like about it is that they are listening to their audience, right? They're realizing that there is a lack of interest, and they're then making a right decision in providing customer restitutions, where they could have gone against that and decided to still move forward. But hopefully this leads to some rebuilding trust in the space for other companies that might come after them.
Interesting. Well, we'll see if this raises the trust in cryptocurrencies again. At least we'll see. You'll let us know, Zoe, in a few months if, being a crypto exec, you still receive complaints from other people asking you, "Oh, did these guys around FTX get punished or something?" We'll see that. We will see that.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's funny that maybe FTX is coming back or is not coming back, but some of the executives from FTX are already launching another exchange.
Yeah, sadly. But yeah,
it's funny that like these lessons are just not learned, and we are seeing like repeats of the same people just popping up. And I think it is something where the community needs to educate themselves and do your own research on who you actually doing business with.
That can kind of make me think about that Martin Scorsese movie, the Wolf of Wall Street. Well, it's a very common narrative trope. I mean, you can see also that with Lord of War by Andrew Niccol, with Nicolas Cage. You have basically a person who's really an evil, but you can root for that. Charismatic person, so you can root for that main protagonist, but that protagonist is basically doing unspeakable acts and very cynical acts, and in the end, okay, the guy hasn't learned anything. The guy is even glorified for everything he did, and I wouldn't be surprised if in 10 or 15 years I wouldn't be surprised to see a biopic of Sam Bankman-Fried, and there would be the next guy having the Hollywood spot of Jonah Hill saying, "Okay, you know, I was making $25,000 a day by selling Bitcoin these days, and these at this time," and you would see and you'll basically hear the voiceover and banknotes flowing, and that's the problem, is that it's not just a narrative trope. These guys never learn and obviously don't even grow, and they are still allowed to do their business. But then again, as a famous French humorist would say, if they find people dumb enough to trust them, I'm sorry about the statement, but that's interesting. And
Yeah, I mean, last I heard, SBF was cornering the mackerel market in prison, so he's still up to like doing some trades.
at least he is, yes. At least not everyone on FTX, but hopefully he will purge some of his sentence. And you know, this is a good transition, because I thought about the fact that it would maybe raise the bar a bit, and so that people would trust the blockchain industry a bit more again. But we have another news from Germany, and I'd like to hear your thoughts, guys, because I don't know if this is a good news or a bad news. So, in Germany, precisely in a specific region of Germany that is called the Sax, the German police has seized $2.1 billion worth of Bitcoin in a huge net attack. So I think the amount is around 50k Bitcoins, and that's quite interesting because there was a piracy website violating many copyright acts and also offering counterfeit products. And so the few articles I read about this said that one of the two suspects voluntarily transferred the Bitcoin vault to the Federal Criminal Police Office, so the BKA in Germany. When it's been so, I don't know what happened, but if they say voluntarily, it means that that's probably has been negotiated against a sentence reduction, probably. But is that a good news for the crypto industry? I have both answers in my head, yes or no. But what do you guys think? The fact that
I think that it's good for holding people accountable when they're doing something wrong, regardless of how they're doing their transactions. And I think this might be very good news for Michael Saylor. He is like a big fan of buying government auction Bitcoin, and we know that he just sold some more shares in MicroStrategy to snap up some more Bitcoin, and like maybe this is a target.
Okay, interesting. Well, indeed, and yes, it holds people accountable. And even though Bitcoin is not illegal per se, it's absolutely legal, and everything is allowed on on this market, and everything that is allowed on the dollar market is allowed in Bitcoin. But what I'm fearing, and I would like to hear your thoughts about it. Is it is the public, is the audience going to be prejudiced against Bitcoin by thinking, oh, yet another network of criminals who paid things in Bitcoin? And I know that the U.S. dollar is the currency that is used the most in criminal networks, and nobody's against the U.S. dollar for that reason. But still, since Bitcoin is still a bit immature as a market, maybe that would be bad reputation. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, like, honestly, it's just not fun to say that, like, okay, we seized like $2 billion worth of dollars. Like, okay. Like, that happens all the time. It's not every day that somebody gets $2 billion or a million, like worth of Bitcoin, and this is something that's new, and it's going to make the news.
Absolutely. But again, it's good because it also means that now the police is used to it, and one of the biggest European countries. So they basically saw that. They said, oh, illegal money. Okay, they laundered money. We're seizing it, and now we're reusing it. And this is also what happened with dollars when the police would basically use their huge fishnet to catch criminals, and then basically use that money and auction it in order to get to just get resources. So they would do the same thing with US dollars or with euros. So it's a good thing that they're doing this with Bitcoin. It means that they're treating it as a genuine currency, and after all, it means that it's a serious currency because crooks and scammers are using it. So that means it has some potential.
That's That's a good point you make there.
Zoe, does that make you raise an eyebrow? I see you skeptical.
Yeah. I mean, just the fact that, like, essentially the same kinds of things, regardless of whether it's for something scammy or something, positive or just normal, if you will. It's still, yeah. I mean, it still says a lot about cryptocurrencies and where we're headed.
Interesting. All right, and to finish this episode on a very funny note and on a culturally interesting note, you guys know that China is very, let, let's use the euphemism and let's say that is very tight with computer security and is usually spying its citizens quite a lot, right? So you guys know that Bitcoin is banned in China. It has been banned since 2021, trading and mining. Um, and so that's quite interesting because despite this regulation, Bitcoin still is a market there. Do you guys know that?
Yes.
Oh, you guys knew that.
Yeah.
Interesting. How? Where?
Well, I mean, Binance.
That's exactly what came to my mind as well. They did drive them out of the country, though, right? They had to relocate. But I think, yeah, there's still
HQ, but they're still a Chinese company.
Yeah. And I think if you look at the stats, there's still like top 10 countries who are like utilizing or owning the most crypto in the world. So there's still a lot of interest. But I think probably a lot of the influence with this is that the market, the global market right now is at such a weird place, right? Financially. And I think that's driving a lot of investors to look at crypto in a more positive way, right? Like potentially less volatile than our standard stock market, which is an interesting change to how we've been looking at crypto previously. So perhaps it's foretelling of some different times to come.
Well, this is the narrative, isn't it? That you flee to Bitcoin when the markets turn down, right? Just as before you would flee to gold. And in China, a lot of families and individual investments is in property.
Yeah, there are actually many precedents. One of those that come to my mind is when President Modi in India forbid families to have gold. So he wanted to ban cash. India is quite an interesting country in this regard. It's the only country where I've been where they, trivially write stuff on their banknotes like, oh, where shit, I have to buy something for the grocery store. I don't have any. Okay, I read that on a banknote, and I saw many rupees banknotes. With sometimes the face of Gandhi and stuff written on that, just gibberish because people were taking notes on that. So they don't respect their cash that much. In some countries, it's forbidden to do that. And it's interesting because India had this policy to forbid families to have gold in order to escape inflation. And there were some loopholes. For example, if there was a woman in the family, then the amount of gold was a bit, the amount of allowed gold was a bit higher. And the person that I am striving for gender equality says that is a bit rebellious and says, why wouldn't I be allowed to wear my golden earrings and necklaces? But still, because of that, basically everyone tried to flee in Bitcoin instead of gold, and that was quite funny. And this is happening very often in many countries. So I'd like to see if this trend is still going on in 10 years, because that means that there's still a kind of cypherpunk culture in Bitcoin, even though this is a very regulated asset now, and even though there's an ETF about it, there are still people using it in order to fight inflation or economic turmoil.
Sure, and I mean it's funny that you bring up India trying to restrict gold ownership, because it was only in the 1970s in the US that you were actually allowed to start owning gold bullion again.
Oh.
So even in our history, restriction of gold ownership has been common. And this is something where now, through digital gold ownership with Bitcoin, you can't really restrict that. And maybe this is the new narrative, or at least the story unfolding on a global scale, that people are now trusting something that can't actually necessarily be taken from them physically.
Indeed. Indeed, and that's interesting. The person who has done this is a finance executive. So his name is Dylan Run. Well, Run if you pronounce it in the Chinese way. We don't know his. I'd like to find out his real Chinese name, but whatever. It's very common for Chinese people to have your Chinese name and an international name. And I even knew one who had on his desk 5 business cards, each one with a French, German, and British first name, but the same family name every time. And so, anyway, that guy Dylan Rune has basically found a loophole. He used bank cards issued by very small rural banks in order to buy cryptocurrencies, and each transaction was capped at 50,000 yuan. So it's these days it's around $7,000. So basically, it was to escape scrutiny, and that person definitely did that in order to use it as a safe haven. But that means that there probably are other people like this Dylan Rune trying to do the same thing. It's quite interesting. Question is, Zoe, what do you think? Is it going to be technically feasible now that the loophole has been exposed?
Oof. I'm not sure.
Because their network is still, China is very good at tightening security once they understand something, and there are many informal and gray market peer-to-peer businesses, so they cannot censor crypto wallets, but they can censor, they can still track down transactions from people who are using credit cards. So how technically could they prevent that? If they can, I don't know if that's possible. Do you think it's possible?
I think they could probably find a way, even if it's not kind of as certain as other security measures that they've implemented. They'll find a way to do the best they can.
Interesting.
Yeah, and I think that now with the pressure of Evergrande, one of the largest, if it was not the largest property developers, filing for bankruptcy, and Country Garden, another very large property developer, missing interest payments last year. The property market in China is in turmoil, and this is a lot of money. And what is more important to China and the government is stability than making sure that people are not buying Bitcoin. And if people's life savings are being driven to zero, they might turn a blind eye to people running to safe assets that are not necessarily going to be in other international markets, such as the US. And I say that because Chinese markets actually turned off selling for certain ETFs and index funds related to the American market because they were being converted to like American actual ownership in a different country. And like that is money leaving the country, which is really what they do not want. Somebody going and buying Bitcoin in China will still probably be converting that back into a yuan or actually doing transactions inside of China.
So we'll see, wait and see, but that's quite interesting. This reminds me of an anecdote. Is when I was in China, I was doing a translation gig in 2019, I guess. And at the time, I wanted to send my girlfriend a little hello, and because of that, I installed a VPN. and I think it
Things
was
you do for love.
things you do for love, yes. But the Chinese knows that. Usually these guys know perfectly that you have to have two phones. And I did the mistake. I didn't take it seriously because, in France, basically, when you illegally download a movie, after doing it maybe a couple hundreds of times, then if you do it 200 times, you might receive a warning email on the email address that they have, so not necessarily the one that you use, and they will tell you, oh, please stop doing that. And if you are warned maybe 7, 8 times, they might give you a fine of $10. So that's what's happening in France. And for the little funny history, I even got a warning for downloading one of the movies I had produced in my career a long time ago. So that was quite funny. But the thing is, I didn't take it seriously. In China, I did that. So I installed NordVPN and I tried to log in on Gmail just to send hi to my girlfriend. And what happened is that when then I started WeChat, so Weixin in Chinese, I received a pop-up, just a modal splash page on my phone in Chinese, telling me you have been using a prohibited app in the People's Republic of China, and you are now banned for life on WeChat. And so, no warning, nothing, no summation. So it was quite interesting to see the difference in mentality. So I was thinking, could they do that with crypto wallets, maybe to block people from WeChat if they spot a crypto wallet at the same time? So they wouldn't prevent Bitcoin per se, but they would really make life harder on other networks. Maybe would that be technical feasible to you guys? What do you think?
I think the government will always try, but in the same way, it almost feels like human nature to try to exploit systems like this. So the same way that the government will possibly try to do that, people will always find a way, if they want to do something, to do it. So perhaps maybe you were using a VPN that they know, but perhaps the locals are finding other ways around it that you didn't know because you were just traveling. So
and then you will have kids who are very gifted and who will program their own VPNs and so on. Thanks for that touch of funny hope and that glimpse of a future evolutionary race between governments and cryptocurrency users. Thank you for listening to that, everyone. This was the Real World Blockchain podcast with myself, yours truly, Gauthier, Niles, Zoe, and Rebecca. And this podcast has been brought to you by Web3 Enabler. Episode notes and disclaimers can always be found below. Please remember to like, subscribe, and share. You can join us on Twitter, Discord, Telegram, and all our other networks. We will see you next week for more blockchain and crypto payment news.